in the media conference with Lal Goyal, which is brought to you by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan. Our endeavor is to bring to you and enlighten you with the current topic. And today, our topic is labor problems and solutions. Before I will go on the topic, I would like to inform you that today, media conference with Lal Goyal has completed 9 months of its telecast. We have started this program on 22nd March, the first Janta lockdown day. And from that day, we are doing regularly this program with the support of all of you, all the viewers, as well as all our media partners. So thank you very much for giving your support, and we hope that we will continue our positive media for the national building as usual as we are doing. Now, today, India is also celebrating National Mathematics Day. The Indian government declared 22nd December to be National Mathematics Day. This was announced by the then Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, on 26th February 2012 at Madras University during the inaugural ceremony of the celebrations to mark the 125th anniversary of the birth of Indian mathematical genius Srinivasa Ramanujam, who was born on 22nd December 1887. On this occasion, Mr. Singh also announced that 2012 would be celebrated as the National Mathematics Year. Since then, India's National Mathematics Day is celebrated on every 22nd December with numerous educational events held at schools and universities throughout the country. In 2017, the day's significance was enhanced by the opening of the Ramanujan Math Park in Kuppam in Chittoor, Andhra Pradesh. We wish everyone a very happy Mathematics Day. Now, today's topic, that is labor, problems and solutions. Labor in India refers to employment in the economy of India. In 2012, there were around 487 million workers in India, the second largest after China. Of these, over 94% work in unincorporated, unorganized enterprises ranging from pushcart vendors to home-based diamond and gem polishing operations. The organized sectors include workers employed by the government, state-owned enterprises, and private sector enterprises. In 2008, the organized sector employed 27.5 million workers, of which 17.3 million worked for government or government-owned entities. Over 94% of India's working population is part of the unorganized sector. In local terms, organized sector or formal sector in India refers to licensed organizations, that is, those who are registered and pay GST. These include the publicly traded companies, incorporated or formally registered entities, corporations, factories, shopping malls, hotels, and large businesses. Unorganized sectors, also known as own account enterprises, refer to all unlicensed, self-employed or unregistered economic activities such as owner-manned general stores, handicrafts and handloom workers, rural traders, farmers, etc. India's Ministry of Labor in its 2008 report classified the unorganized labor in India into 4 groups. This classification categorized India's unorganized labor force by occupation, nature of employment, especially distressed categories and service categories. The unorganized occupational groups include small and marginal farmers, landless agricultural laborers, shop croppers, fishermen, those engaged in animal husbandry, beedi rolling, labeling and packing, building and construction workers, leather workers, weavers, artisans, salt workers, workers in brick kilns and stone quarries, workers in sawmills, and workers in oil mills, etc. A separate category based on nature of employment includes attached agricultural laborers, bonded laborers, migrant workers, contract and casual laborers. Another separate category dedicated to distressed unorganized sector includes toddy tappers, scavengers, carriers of head loads, drivers of animal-driven vehicles, loaders and unloaders. The last unorganized labor category includes service workers such as midwives, domestic workers, barbers, vegetable and fruit vendors, newspapers vendors, pavement vendors, hand cart operators, and the unorganized retail. The unorganized sector has low productivity and offers low wages. Even though it accounted for over 94% of workers, India's unorganized sector created just 57% of India's national domestic product in 2006, or about ninefold less per worker than the organized sector. The productivity gap sharply worsened when rural unorganized sector is compared to urban unorganized sector, with gross value added productivity gap spiking an additional 2 to 4-fold depending on occupation. Some of lowest income jobs are in the rural unorganized sectors. Poverty rates are reported to be significantly higher in families where all working age members have only worked the unorganized sector throughout their lives. Agriculture, dairy, horticulture, and related occupations alone employ 52% of labor in India. About 30 million workers are migrant workers. Most in agriculture, and local stable employment is unavailable for them. India's National Sample Survey Office, in its 67th report, found that unorganized manufacturing, unorganized trading, retail, and unorganized services employed about 10% each of all workers nationwide as of 2010. It also reported that India had about 58 million unincorporated non-agriculture enterprises in 2010. In the organized private sectors, with more than 10 employees per company, the biggest employers in 2008 were manufacturing at 5 million, social services at 2.2 million, which includes private schools and hospitals, finance at 1.1 million, which includes bank, insurance, and real estate, and agriculture at 1 million. India had more central and state government employees in 2008 than employees in all private sector companies combined. If state-owned companies and municipal government employees were included, India had 1.8:1 ratio between public sector employees and private sector employees. In terms of gender equality in employment role, male to female ratio was 5:1 in government and government-owned enterprises. Private sector fared better at 3:1 ratio. Combined, counting only companies with more than 10 employees per company, the organized public and private sector employed 5.5 million women and 2.2 million men. Given its natural rates of population growth and aging characteristics, India is adding about 13 million new workers every year to its labor pool. India's economy has been adding about 8 million new jobs every year, predominantly in low-paying, unorganized sectors. The remaining 5 million youth joining the ranks of poorly paid, partial employment, casual labor pool for temporary infrastructure and real estate construction jobs, or in many cases being unemployed. The 8 major problems faced by labor market in India. The problems are surplus labor force, unskilled labor, lack of absorption of skilled labor, imperfections, work culture, militant unionism, unemployment, lack of labor reforms. We have seen that the labor market in India has been suffering from the aforesaid serious problems. Indian migrant workers during the COVID-19 pandemic have faced multiple hardships, with factories and workplaces shut down due to the lockdown imposed in the country. Millions of migrant workers had to deal with the loss of income, food shortages, and uncertainty about their future. Following this, many of them and their families went hungry. Thousands of them then began walking back home with no means of transport due to the lockdown. In response, the central and state governments took various measures to help them and later arranged transport for them. More than 300 migrant workers died due to the lockdown, with reasons ranging from starvation, suicides, exhaustion, road and rail accidents, police brutality, and denial of timely medical care. In the backdrop of COVID-19, Government of India, Ministry of Labor, Labor Advisory Board, under the chairmanship of Mr. S. Bhumrao, appointed a one-man expert commission to look into the problems of the workforce in India and suggest viable solutions. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, assumed charge as the one-man expert commission and commenced work on International Labour Day, that is 1st May 2020. The commission held extensive deliberations with employees, employers, and government experts, academicians, and a cross-sectional society. International Labour Organization also held detailed discussion with the commission. Frequently, interactions were held with the Pravasis, traditional craftsmen, artists, and vulnerable sections of society, such as the fishermen. Major findings were submitted to the Government of India. The Commission has drawn 3 reports. Reports on workforce, report on art and culture, soft power, report on fishing sector. The major recommendations of the Commission include National Registry of Workers and Artists, UID for the registrants, One Nation, One Ration Card, National Labour Authority, Arts Authority of India, assured basic income for workers and artists in distress, institutions to ensure social security, skill development to improve the employability of workers, granting professional status for artists on a par with the professionals like medicine, engineering, and law, International Labour Institute in India, appointment of artists as cultural emissaries in our embassies, special economic zones for secure investment by returning Pravasis, 40-point development agenda for the fisheries sectors. In all, 156 recommendations have been drawn up by the Commission, focusing on the economic, social, and cultural life of the various stakeholders. Impact of media conference with Lal Goyal. Media conference with Lal Goyal and Global TV are proud to announce that the suggestions for National Registry for Workers and One Nation, One Ration Card were first discussed on media conference with Lal Goyal. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, as guest panelist, took the note of these suggestions and submitted an interim report to Government of India. The Government of India accepted the recommendation and set up the National Registry for Workers, as also roll out One Nation, One Ration Card scheme. The Government of India, under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi, sanctioned rupees 643 crores for implementation of National Registry for Workers. Media conference with Lal Goyal and Global TV give thanks to Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, and Mr. S. Bhumrao for immediate implementation of the recommendations. Media conference with Lal Goyal and Global TV are committed for positive media to do the nation building. Now, to discuss our today's very, very hot topic, that is labor problems and solutions, we have a very elite, experienced panelists are with us. And I would like to invite my first guest, and he is Mr. Deepak Vishwanath. Mr. Deepak Vishwanath is M.Tech from National Institute of Industrial Engineering, Mumbai. He was commissioned in the Indian Navy on 1st July 1980 in the engineering branch. On completion of 22 years of naval services in 2002, he started working as a training consultant to corporate houses before joining HFH India Trust at the Jimmy Carter project site Lonavala in 2006. He worked at Habitat for Humanity India Trust from 2006 till December 2016 in various capacities and roles. He was project manager at Jimmy Carter Work Project at Lonavala from 2006 to 2008, responsible for project management at M&E. He was director Habitat Resource Center HRC Mumbai 2008 to 2010. He was director then Senior Director Operations and Technical Services at HFH National Office from 2010 to 2015. He was consultant to HFH India 2015 to December 2016. He is now consultant to HFH International as well as TCIS to provide technical support to the India team. Welcome, Mr. Deepak Vishnath on our show. Mr. Deepak Vishnath, you are also very closely associated with Dr. C.V. Anand Bose IAS one-man expert commission for drawing the report, especially for the conditions of the workers, the labor force. We would definitely like to know from you the labor problems and solutions, and what input you have also given, and what is your how about this particular commission report, which is likely to be submitted very soon to the Honorable Prime Minister with all the recommendations, although the interim recommendations has already been submitted. I will invite Mr. Deepak Vishnath to give his views on labor problems and solution. Mr. Deepak Vishnath, please.
Firstly, let me start, as I said at the outset, to congratulate you, Organ Donation Foundation, Gyan, and Global TV News on completion of 9 months of these broadcasts, bringing a lot of intellectual insights into various topics. Thank you also for the roundup of the issues faced by labor in India, the categorization of informal, formal, unorganized, organized, which I will delve on a bit later. To give a bit of historical context of my association, we are actually a shelter venture lab in India called Terviliga Center, which is a program of Habitat for Humanity International, which is an international NGO looking into the housing sector for the low-income poor. The Shelter Venture Lab in India looks at issues which can improve conditions of housing for the low-income households by way of improving access to, say, building materials, building awareness to building materials, to providing construction labor better skills, upgradation of skills so they can serve the low-income households better, to make innovations to be on the front line. We look at encouraging startups to develop their concepts and business plans to reach markets, and also to some extent give them catalytic funds so that they can start their businesses on a good financial note. Having said that, when the lockdowns happened and we saw an exodus of workers, we realized that a large portion of these were construction workers whom we had been working with closely. It was then decided that the Terviliga Center, that is the Shelter Lab, would try to focus and see what are the vulnerabilities of the labor sector which were getting exposed due to this reverse migration. That is the time when the government of India appointed Dr. C.V. Anand Bose as the one-man expert commission. And with a mutual agreement, Dr. Bose consented to us carrying out a couple of surveys of the migrant labor who were returning, to understand what their socio-economic conditions were prior to the lockdown, during the lockdown, what kind of challenges they faced, and what would their mindsets be to return, to what kind of ecosystem would they like to return to. Thereafter, we organized a series of roundtables with experts from the academic institutions, from the government, from employers, employees, trade unions, NGOs, etc., to put together a set of recommendations which we called short-term, medium-term, and long-term recommendations. In the short term, we were looking at quick amelioration of distress of the migrant workers. In the medium term, we were looking at what would be a successful reintegration of these returning migrants. And in the long term is where we took in, defined a pathway to look at policy, labor laws, institutional corrections which needed to be put into place so that India would merge from this crisis with a better focus on the labor force, so that we understand that their contribution to our lives is huge. And unless we recognize that, we will stand to lose. This was when TCIS was put on the drafting committee. That is me and one of my colleagues, Prasanna Sriraman. We were on the drafting committee to Dr. Anand Bose. And with all the desk research, primary inputs of information, we were able to put together this report. So that's the context of how the drafting of the report took place. Now, you asked me some issues which I will put in the introduction, then I'll come to the recommendations, core policy, institutional aspects little later. Now, as you rightly said, the issues facing labor today, especially the what we call the informal or unorganized labor, and this also includes a lot of unorganized or informal labor working in formal or organized sector. That is the contract labor which may be employed by PSUs and all, who are also disadvantaged. So broadly, I would say the conditions affecting the unorganized sector is, first is the work conditions. Second is the safety. Third, social security. Fourth, livelihoods. I'm not covering all aspects. I'm going to give priority to work. What are the conditions they work in? Generally, as you said, the work can be defined as 3 Ds. That is difficult, dangerous, and sometimes demeaning. Point 2, social security. Do we have social security which encompasses, or a floor level social security, or a basic social security which covers all the unorganized workers? That's an issue. It does not cover. Most of the labor codes, now the labor codes, look at the organized sector with a, I won't say a bias, but it addresses the issues of organized sector and not the informal or the unorganized sector. So social security is something we have to look at. We have to especially focus our lenses on the disadvantaged unorganized workers. That could be ladies, could be forced labor, could be tribals, or any other minorities or disadvantaged workers who are taken advantages of. We have to look at wages. There are wage rules, but what is the implementation? How can we change and improve that a basic minimum wage is ensured even to the unorganized, invisible workforce? What are the opportunities for skilling, upskilling, and upgrading of skills so that employability improves? Last, the issue with us is there has been no apex body or a focal nodal agency which is looking at development of the unorganized sector. Now, that is something which we are addressing in our recommendations. Now, apart from this, we specially studied migrant labor. What are the challenges facing migrant labor, which is not maybe an issue with the unorganized sector who are non-migrants? Migrant labor have 3 challenges, as Dr. Ravi Srivastava says from IHD. They have a location challenge. You know, there are seasonal migrants who are the bottom of the pyramid, moving from place to place within the same year. They have, the others have domicile challenges. That means from the origin state, when they reach the destination state, they're actually not eligible for a lot of schemes because they do not have a domicile. Third, a lot of them have identity challenges. How do you prove who you are? Next, portability of benefits. Now, of course, one ration card, and we also mooted in our recommendation, one ration, one family, multiple ration card. That means even if a migrant worker leaves his wife, mother, and children back in the origin state, he has access to PDS, NFSA, minimum food himself in the destination state, and his family has access with a set of ration cards in their origin state. We looked at electoral rights. Once migrant workers move to a destination state, they can't really vote. Our postal ballot system is not as efficient as it can be. So we have, in the recommendations, mooted for, we call it an electronic or transmission of vote, so that they can vote even if they are away from the destination. We have looked at housing challenges to a large extent, because when migrants come to urban areas, which is the largest migrant group. Of course, I'm not leaving out the agriculture sector where it's a rural to rural, but interstate. Rural to urban, one of the key challenges is housing. Is the rental housing market really visible? Is the supply versus the demand matched, or can it be done better? Is the government's new policy on ARHCs a move in that direction? And how can we improve the rental housing market so that supply demand, migrant worker versus landlord, there is a meeting point and a system where they can access affordable housing. And last, of course, in the migration, we looked at women and children, because when women move, they move with the children. What are the kind of special vulnerabilities they face, the educational, the health, and other access to services which they would need to lead a dignified life and to have decent work. So these are some of the issues of the general unorganized force and the migrants. The policy, the recommendations, I will come to maybe later once the other speakers have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deepak, for giving your views about the problems faced by the labor, and especially you said that you will be talking right now about the migrants, and you have highlighted how the migrants are facing problems, what are the challenges, what are the issues they are facing or they faced, and especially because of the COVID-19 lockdown, when the so much migration has taken place, and what are the challenges for the reverse migration or for the resettlement of them, as well as for their jobs to be reinstated, their housing conditions, educational conditions, medical conditions for that. And he said that many recommendations have been done because he was along with the Mr. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose. He has their organization, and they have done lots of work. And now, because of those recommendations which has been sent and which is going to be presented soon to the Honorable Prime Minister, it's going to, if it will be implemented, definitely it will be beneficial, and the problems, the solutions are there, what's the problems are there. Thank you very much, Mr. Deepak, for giving your opening remarks about the labor's problems which the country is facing. Now, I would like to invite my next guest, and he's Mr. Premchand P. Mr. Premchand P is the management consultant based at Kochi. Mr. Premchand has started his career with Gwalior Rayon Calicut way back in 1976, moved over to Bamanlori, IRE, Sud Chemi India, and was thereafter advisor to Rajgiri Hospital and NITA. He has over 45 years of hardcore experience in the labor field. Mr. Premchand, welcome to our show. Please unmute yourself. Mr. Premchand, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Please, yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Premchand, you have heard the report which I read, as well as the opening remarks of Mr. Deepak Vishwanath, and where he has mentioned how the migrants are facing challenges, as well as what are the recommendations sent or prepared by him and were incorporated in the one-man expert commission under the chairmanship of Dr. C.V. Anand Bose IAS. Now, we would like to know from you, because you are a hardcore, you are having hardcore experience of 45 years with the labor field. Definitely, you would like to know the labor problems and solution. Mr. Premchand P, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. And at the outset, let me congratulate you. And I'm very happy to be one of the guests in today's panel, basically because this is, I understand, the ninth month, and the celebration of the 9th month today. I'm happy to be with this team, and I congratulate you and the TV, and also I congratulate Mr. Deepak, who had given a very good presentation on his recommendations or the suggestions on that, or the approach to make the recommendations. Now, when I thought when I speak, I will take a slightly different turn from this, because, in fact, as an outsider, I have not had the opportunity to go through or get into the one-man commission reports, because those are still not formally finalized or announced. So I'm told, but of course, though I know there was from press reports that a one-man commission has been formed and the studies are going on and all that, and Mr. Ananda Bose being very closely associated. In fact, I had the fortune to be very closely associated with him when he was the Labour Secretary of Government of Kerala, and at that time, on various labour reforms and labour things, I had the opportunity to consult, or he had the opportunity to discuss with me, and we together had various suggestions as a team, and in fact, I had personally benefited a lot, which possibly added to strength of my labour management skills. Now, when we talk about labor problems, generally the first impression that goes to the mind of the public is the labor creating issues. Labor problems means just interstitiations or violence and not permitting the management to sort of run the organization. It is, to me, the labor problem is just not a small issue like related to the labor alone. It is a very, very macro-based issue, where it starts from, we in India, if you take, we have so many skilled or skilled potential, unskilled labor, skilled labor, and unemployed manpower. But effective utilization of them into the right resource at the right place we have always been facing a challenge, and training them properly. So the labor problem starts right because it is just not the industrializations issue that is there in an industry, but it starts right from the time when the skilled youngsters are remaining unemployed, and they are not able to use their potential, or they are not able to make their both ends meet. And when we look at that, we have a very, very excellent spread of manpower skills, and Indian labor is much wanted out of India. But why are we not being able to utilize them properly in our country? That's basically, I feel that there is a gap, and that is where we should look at and bring in a culture of more industrialization, more sort of ancillary industries development, where these potential skills can be used. We are talking about, I was referring about migrant labor. Migrant labor, why are they leaving their state, their family at their respective state, and coming to other states to work? When we have each state has their own skilled labor, basically because they have no proper industrialized developed situation there in their respective states. So as a whole, the country should look at bringing in industries, of course, not affecting the environmental scenario, bringing in developing industries suiting to each state, and also develop and empower the potential skills there, manpower there, and utilize them with proper training. And many a time what happens is, right from my junior days when I started, what we in industry, what we have learned in the theory and even in practice, when we start a greenfield industry, we start saying that what is first and prime is finance, fund, then machinery, and then comes labor. So the asset, the human asset behind that industry is gaining the least and the last priority. By the time everything is set up, and then comes the HR expert or the human relations expert, who is responsible to bring in skilled labor, trained labor, and develop their attitude, merge them with the industry. And by that time, the scenario is different, and then it starts into a different issues, and then that is where the labor problem starts. Of late, of course, there's a major change in many industries. The labor started gaining a priority, and they have become the first. Before even finance, they're taking the right labor, right attitude, right position, right manning, and the right skill. And even in many of the of late startups, The same issue that happens. What happens is, in many of, even the major startups that is coming up, where the labor, the issues relating to the labor, the working conditions, their minimum salary protections, their basic working environment inside the factory, their living conditions outside are all being given the last priority. I won't say not given any priority, but the last priority, and then the labor becomes they become very, very sort of difficult to, and then the situation changes and becomes more into a sort of a reactive situation. So what is basically essential is to properly train and properly understand the need. And another major thing is the management is not looking at the real issues behind the labor or the real requirements of the labor. And another reason is you have about 30, 40 labor acts, and each act contradicts each other. But of course, now that the labor codes are coming in, which has merged all this and brought into 4 capsule labor codes, things are different, that are changing, and there is a sort of a uniformity in approach. But even in textile shops, even in shops otherwise, workers don't have a proper atmosphere, a welcome position to sit. These create a militancy. And again, the most important is not accepting our labor's attitude. The labor's attitude, may even outside, abroad, our employees, one stigma they have is their attitude. We, the HR professionals or the management or the government, should see that there is a proper approach to development of their attitudes, to have training programs to empower them and their attitude suiting to their required industry and their required skill, and thus develop them into potential people, and then try to find out development of industries in India where the whole the well-spoken concept of Make in India comes in, and when labor problem is certainly being addressed. Then again, another point I was wanting to tell about was that about the excessive trade unionism. The trade unions have to find out, has to see that they stand for the workers and their reason, no doubt, but with specific reference to the industry where they are attached to. Instead of looking at the whole Indian politics, Indian political scenario, they have to work suiting to support and help the workers suiting to their respective industries and where their working conditions, their working atmospheres are well taken care of. This is what is very important. Many a time we find this gap between the two is missing. That is where one has to address. And again, the workers should develop, we should, as the management, as the employers, we should be able to develop a proper sort of confidence among the workers that their requirements, their needs are addressed to. This will take care of their apprehension, and and also communication. Another major thing which is left out, and many a time we forget, is to properly communicate to the employees working in each industry on what are their requirements, what is it that the company looks out of them, what is the future growth of the company, where they are going to, what is the market potential. And these are, and there are many private sector companies, family-owned companies, where even without a single union, the company works very well. I'm not naming companies, but there are companies. Why? Because they give basic importance to the HR skills, and they give proper attention and guidance to the employees with proper skill development, training, and attitudinal correction, which is missing in many areas. And they should be able to be attitudinally corrected and focus to the industry. And in that case, things can develop properly and there could be a proper orientation. And with this new codes coming in, and with minimum wages, and also many a time we find employers misusing or not properly not giving the proper legal protection to their employees as required. But as per the new labor codes that is coming in, all these slips have been bridged, and there has been a lot of penal provisions coming in. But again, the government has to seriously look at the implementing machinery who really looks at not fault finding, but fact finding, and look at deviations and correct. Because many a time which happens is even the implementing a machinery goes into fault finding, which is again a sort of issue which most of the management tries to withdraw, shy away from. So it should not be a fault finding area, but it will be a fact finding, and which will be with commitment and passion, and get into fact finding issues and corrections required, and also from the employee side, wherever there is the requirements, that is to be done. Recently, I'm not naming a company, whereas a major issue that has happened basically because the proper law required, the legal provisions has not been properly maintained or properly communicated and entrusted or sort of informed to the employees. And because of that, there was a miscommunication, and that led to a major explosive situation. And there were examples in the past also of similar. So that is where I said I focused on communication, which is very important, which many a time is missing among the employer and the employee. And that is what a link is required. And also the government machinery should ensure that we, without looking up, setting up of industries at each location, suiting to the environment there, and ensuring that there is no brain drain, but at the same time equally utilize our potential, suiting their skills and reorienting them and fixing them into the respective areas of requirement here. Because a skilled worker, if he has no opportunity to utilize his skills or demonstrate his skills, and for the sake of living, for livelihood, he gets into a job or accepts a job at a much lesser pay, at a lesser skill, and later becomes very unhappy and he becomes a negative employee. So what is very important is the right skill and to the right job which is being looked at. And if the skill is absent, reskill, re-empower and retrain. That is something which the government should have a machinery, so that the employers also utilize that machinery and in reskilling and re-empowering employees, and also on a fixed periodicity, training them so that the skills are updated based on the updated technology. These are where I find many a time there is a lot of missing gaps and missing links, which should be addressed properly and taken care of. I think I stop it at this, and we take forward for further discussions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Premchand, for giving your views about the labor problems and solutions. And
Thank
according to Mr. Premchand, he has mentioned that the basic thing which occurs in the mind whenever there is a labor problem, people find faults with the labor. They feel that the labor is always on fault. It is not like this. It is a mutual thing. The management is always many times on fault. And he says that until unless that faith or that is not developed, because the labor wants the proper conditions, working conditions, for which the management too has to see whether they are providing those proper conditions to them or not. According to Mr. Premchand, whenever a new company set up their plant or manufacturing unit, or even their startups, the least priority is given to the labor. And that is why this is not proper. Until unless we will not give them the priority, we will not see their problems holistically, we cannot say that the labor is always on fault. And he has also given the example of the recent incident happened recently in Karnataka, although he has not named. He says that because there's communication gap, it was not communicated properly, the laws were not implemented properly. So these are the things which are creating the problems. He has also mentioned that the government agency should not find, whenever there is a committee or whenever there is some things, they will always, it's a fact-finding committee, they always go for the fault findings things, which is not correct. One should see what are the facts, what are the reasons for all these unrest, or why the things are not happening. And his main emphasis was for the skills. He says if we are not utilizing their skills properly. Although Mr. Premchand, I would like to inform you, and although you might be knowing, but our viewers, that in one of my previous program about the Skill India, in India, the skilled labor is only 2.7%, while in South Korea, it is 98%. And in Germany and other places are about almost 80%. So in India, the skill training, either it is very less, even if it is less, then also they are still unemployed because their employability is not there, for which Mr. Premchand has given a very good solution. He says that the management or the companies should reskill them time to time. The government should start a body which will for the reskilling, and the management must utilize that government body to try to take the advantage. Thank you very much, Mr. Premchand, for giving the full scenario of the labor problems as well as the solutions, how the laborers can. And one more very important point which he has raised is about the trade unions. He said the trade union should see the industry-specific problems. Instead of the country problems, the entire political scenario, they should be above the politics. They must concentrate if there is a problem of a trade union or the union in a particular industry, they must concentrate for that, not try to involve the politics in that. Thank you very much, Mr. Premchand, for giving your views. So I'm sure because you are really a hardcore person who has worked so much with the labor, so you know ins and outs of everything. Definitely this message or the views which you have opened is definitely be eye-openers for many of our viewers, many of the management people, even for the laborers. Thank you very much, Mr. Premchand. Now I would like to move to my next guest. I would like to invite Mr. Abraham Therian. Mr. Abraham is the former executive director of South Indian Bank, having served from April 2009 to September 2014. Prior to the 6-year stint at South Indian Bank, he spent 36 years at Federal Bank in various leadership positions. Mr. Abraham has a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry and Masters of Arts degree in sociology. He completed his Masters of Business Administration from Cochin University. He is also a certified Associate of Indian Institute of Bankers. After retiring from South Indian Bank as Executive Director in September 2014, he has been serving as a director at V-Star, a V-Guard Group company. He co-authored a book, Handbook on Bankers and Service Conditions of Federal Bank, published on behalf of Federal Bank Officers Association in 1988-1991. He was the president of State Forum of Bankers Club Kerala, an apex body of bankers clubs in Kerala. He was management committee member of Kerala Management Association. He was the chairman of CSR Task Force of Confederation of Indian Industry. He was the panel member of IBA Standing Committee on Payment System and Banking Technology. Welcome, Mr. Abraham, on our show. Mr. Abraham, you have already heard what our earlier panelist, Mr. Deepak, as well as Mr. Premchand has spoken. Now, you being a banker your whole life, and now you are a director of a very big corporate group, you have also dealt with the labor extensively. So we would like to know from you the labor problems and solution. Mr. Abraham Therian, please.
Hi, Mr. Goel, other panelists. I am not an expert on HR-related issues as a specialist, but I have been working in an organization which is for years having a very organized kind of a labor situations and rules and regulations and a structured kind of a management like any other bank in the country. So it is something different than a unorganized labor and situations like that. We have not come across at all till my retirement in the bank, because it has been a totally protected environment we have been working, including all the workers in the bank who have been all have been members of a very strong union one union, and this is how the working has been happening in almost all the Kerala-based banks. But later, when I moved out to V-Guard Group company, where I was the executive director and now as a director, that's a different type of a company where the unions are not strong, but at the same time, it's been a very benevolent company, having a lot of goodwill, and it has been a growing company with a national presence, just like the other two banks where I worked. So with this background, my experience, my thoughts are, I can share now. I am extremely happy that this kind of an initiative has been taken by Mr. Goyal, and the subject is very relevant today, especially in the background of the trade, labor code being passed in the parliament, that is in the stage of implementation. I think we should have, and at the same time, Sri Ananda Bose looking at these things as a one-man commission, a person who knew Kerala so well, who knew Delhi so well, who knew the ordinary Indian's life so well as a very passionate bureaucrat. I think his views will be very well structured, because he has been having a vast experience in labor, that too in a state like Kerala. First of all, I should say that there is a vast gap between the organized and unorganized labor in India today. Because the organized labor, actually this is highly protected, highly unionized. They get practically every prerequisites, and till their death, they are taken care of very well in the companies. So that's the type, whether it is, as Mr. Goyal mentioned, whether it is a government company or a corporate or a large establishment in the private sector or the joint structure, the Tata Group or the Reliance Group, that's a totally different type of a company where there are enough of protections are available. But at the same time, if you see the other end of it, is absolutely no kind of a protections are there. Job security is nil. It is totally disorganized. Unions are not interested in organizing them. The management, their interests are not protected because they are not organized. And if you allow them to get organized through the militant units, the militant unions, again, it's going to be a big, it will be a big beating to our India's progress. So we have to ensure that the unorganized sector in India has to be taken care of by the protection, by the government. And I'm so happy that the government is taking such a lot of effort to take care of those people also through the new labor codes, which has been substituted from the old labor rules of 1923 and 1946. How many years back those rules have been made? So today it is a more relevant rules are coming, and a lot of ambiguities are being removed, and a lot of duplications have been removed, a lot of contradictions have been removed. So definitely there is a clarity of thought is there. That is one aspect. So it will take care of the new rules will take care of disorganized sector in a better way. Second issue is with regard to the benefits which is being enjoyed by the unorganized labor. I should say it is very, very bad. Whether it is a laborer today working in a floor of a company, or even a unaided school teacher, or an unaided school professor, unaided school lecturer, the situation, or in an unorganized hospital, the situation, although how qualified they are, the gap between the rich and the poor, what you say in the social circumstances, here the gap between the staff working in the organized sector and the unorganized sector, or a government sector, or an aided sector and the unaided sector is so vast. I understand that even the lecturer's salary in some of the unaided schools and colleges are as even poorer than that of what the domestic servant in our houses are getting. At the same time, the organized sector, the professors are getting, we can't even think of that kind of a social security is there for them. Everybody is getting more than 1 lakh of rupees, and even on retirement, they get half a lakh of rupees. So this is something, or even more than that, and they have a lot of social service conditions are in their favor. So this gap is something which the government has to identify. This is something where I see there is a lot of inequality and injustice is there in all over the country, even in Kerala, which is supposed to be a little more socialistic in its pattern. This is one aspect I would like to say. Second is basically the vast disparity between the regions in the regional wise imbalances within the country itself. A laborer in Bengal may get 200 rupees. At the same time, a laborer who comes here or a laborer born and brought up in Kerala will get around 800 rupees, 900 rupees, or even 1000 rupees. So if you are going to try to uplift the poor and also to make them raise their wages, there is going to be a very big challenge for the government how you are able to do it. Because already there is a lot of inequality. Bringing them to 500 rupees wages per day will not solve any of the problems of a Kerala laborer. But if it's being made 1,200 rupees, will be most unviable for an agriculturist who is employing him in some other state. So there is going to be a regional wise study, and the social conditions have to be taken care before wages and all those related aspects are being taken, social securities have been taken care of. This is on another area. It's a very big challenge for the government because that inequality is very large between a some person living in a slum in Delhi and in a small territory very close to the town in the city in Cochin. So these kind of situations are there. How the government is going to take care of those kind of laborers who have totally different kind of a lifestyle between themselves. Even I don't think in Kerala, Mr. Goyal will be knowing, or most of the people, I don't know about Mr. Deepak, all others will be familiar with Kerala. Kerala, there is no village at all. It's basically an extended town. There is no agricultural labor under poverty. I don't think there is any BPL people is there. I don't think there is any person who doesn't have a mobile. I don't think there is anybody whose house doesn't have a TV in their house. So this is the situation, but I don't think that's the same situation is there or in a different state, in a northeastern state or in Bihar or those kind of states. So how we are able to make a national law which will take care of all these types of group of people who are in different types as of today in the lifestyles and social security which they are enjoying. This is the second issue I should say. The third is basically there is a lot of difference between the agricultural laborer and other laborers. Agricultural laborer, even today, most of the places, they are not well paid at all. They are in poverty in most of the places. And at the same time, there is a lot of conflict in Kerala. Kerala, the difference is the farm labor is getting a very good wage today. So, and if it's going to be increased, no agriculture will be able to employ them. That is why they started importing people from Bengal or the Bihar. But now the salaries of those people have also gone up. And I'm so happy. 10 years back, I used to see a Bengali coming up in an unreserved train, living in real very bad situations in Kerala, working for the people, getting a very small salary. At the same time, his counterpart getting a large salary of 800, 900 rupees. And all the third-rate jobs will be done by the Bihari or the Bengali, which was absolutely not ridiculous. But situations have changed now. They also have found they demand more, they can demand more, and they are also getting a decent salary. I was so impressed seeing a few of them going for the weekends to Bangalore or to Calcutta by flight. They're going huge lines that they'll be then in Kerala in this low cost airlines going abroad, going to their native place and coming back after 6 days or 7 days because they can save a lot of wages here. They can earn much more salary here. So the moment there is a interaction and the migrant labor has come, it has come for the good for the country, and there will be a lot of national integration, and there will be a equalization between the unequal people in the poorer states. Definitely that way, this new concept or what is happening in the migrant labor is definitely good for the country. This is how I look at it. Why Kerala needs labor? Because here then there's nobody is prepared to work. Nobody is ready to go into a farm and do the work. Everybody is educated, everybody is qualified. At the same time, they don't want to do any menial labor. They all do the menial labor going abroad and do it in the Gulf. At the same time, that is being substituted here by the another set of people who come and take part here. If the Bengalis and the Biharis doesn't come here to Kerala within 2 to 3 months, if they don't come at all, Kerala is going to be in standstill. So this is the situation. And thanks to, I should say it is that immigrant people getting better salaries and better in Kerala. I'm so happy about the whole thing, because socially more equality is going to gain in the process. No government rule can make these things. It's only the society can make these kind of rules. The another thing is basically the
Please be brief. Please be brief.
yeah. Only one more thing I should say. The basically, when you are talking about the laborer, what you have to take care of is basically their health insurance, their life insurance, their accident insurance, their children's education, and social security and pensions, etc. And these are the areas I'm sure Mr. Dr. Bose will take care with the common man, because even I should say in accident insurance, the premiums are very little, very small. If you are compulsorily making it that should be insured, every laborer should be insured. Even in a domestic situation, a domestic servant, I think quite a lot of some problems can be solved in the long run if they meet with an accident, etc. So I think, and finally, I should say things are going for the better. There is a lot of development is taking place in the labor fund, and it should be done in such a way the laborers should not feel that they are being exploited, or it is for pushing the rich or protecting the rich. These kind of regulations are coming. We have to ensure that that kind of a teaching or that kind of a training should also reach the common working people, and they should experience it themselves. These are the thoughts I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abraham, for giving your views. And main thing which Mr. Abraham says, there are lots of differences in even the salary or the packages or the conditions of organized and unorganized sectors, as well as even in the different states. The minimum wages act are different in different states, as well as the conditions. So his emphasis is that the government of India should see to it that everyone should get the same type of salary, whether he's working in Kerala or in Bengal or any other places, with the conditions. But because if they will increase the salary, it might be that the labor will not work in Kerala or in one of the state. The other state will be benefited, but the other state will be lost. So he says, and even the organized and unorganized sector also, he says that the unorganized sector should also be given the priority. They must see to it that the government should see to it that the labor workforce who is working in unorganized sector, they must also be taken care. Otherwise, their conditions, living conditions, or the wages are very poor, and they are not at all getting a responsibility. The responsibility is not with the industrialist or those who are in the unorganized sectors. They are not giving anything to them, and the situation is very pity. Thank you very much, Mr. Abraham, for giving your thoughts and the views. And now I would like to invite my next guest, and he is Mr. Anil Kumar Ji. Mr. Anil Kumar Ji is the Managing Director of Action Rich Business Solutions India Private Limited. He is the Executive Director of BNI. He brings with him over 25 years of experience in human resources, management and development, including industrial relations. He worked with diverse industries such as FMCG, food, engineering, textile, constructions, IT, ITES, etc. Mr. Anil's corporate career was with Hindustan Unilever Limited, Hindustan Construction Company Limited, NEST Group, Vallabh Das Kanji Limited, and Petspin India Limited. As a certified business coach of Action Coach USA, Mr. Anil has been supporting businesses in India and abroad since 2012. As a strategic HRD consultant, he works with corporates within India. In addition, he is the Executive Director of BNI in Cochin and works with over 1150 plus MSME business owners and helps them to grow their businesses using BNI's Global Business Network. Welcome, Mr. Anil Kumar, on our show. Mr. Anil Kumar, you have already heard the earlier panelists in detail. Now, we would like to know from you the labor problems and solutions. Mr. Anil Kumar Ji, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lal Goyal, and I'm really happy to be with such such an eminent panel this morning. And also delighted to hear about the one-man commission that is led by Dr. C.V. Ananda Bose. I was also lucky to listen and learn a lot from his wisdom. I think I believe that the 156 plus recommendation that he has made as in the report will definitely will help the labor problems in India to be resolved in a better way. And you know that yes, his wisdom has worked in many states in India, not only in Kerala, and he has been he knows actually the kind of labor and the labor dynamics across the country, and therefore 100% sure that that report will definitely help improve our labor management systems in the country. And see, when we come to when we discuss about labor problems or solutions, we always think about the legal issues or the dispute that happens between the labor and the management. And also it is day by day when we see continuous problems like that, we feel that the labor problems continues in India. But there are something more which is, according to me, that something more challenging than the labor problem in the industry itself, because like as you already mentioned, Ms. Goel, that a large number of labor is in the unorganized sector itself. So therefore, it becomes much more a public problem rather than just an industry related problem. So I would like to catch those somewhat around 8 problems that you mentioned when you were actually introducing the problems. So some of the things that I have noted down is that the kind of surplus labor that we have. We project our country as a very highly populated, and we completely believe that that is our strength. Our population is our strength. The youth population is our strength. At the same time, we also say that there is surplus labor, which is a weakness, actually speaking. Then the unemployment with the educated youth, which is really considerably higher compared to many other countries. Then comes the educated youth taking or not getting absorbed in right jobs, and therefore they are compelled to go to unskilled job with the frustration, because they have studied a lot. With a lot of frustration, they go to a job, and how it is creating trouble. Then finally, you also mentioned that there are a lot of militancy among the labor and the labor associations, where the dispute resolution can happen through constitutional measures. Some of the cases, they get into the militancy and asset destructions and all, which creates actually fear among the investors or the business owners in the country itself. So the perception about our labor within India becomes a little bit of challenging. So these are some of the things that I would like to pick and then talk about that. So when it comes to the population, we actually make ourselves as the greatest consumer market in the world. We are the biggest. I think we are in the purchase terms, we are the 3rd largest country in the world in terms of purchase power. And the thing is that while we consume a lot, we don't innovate to produce many things that is frequently required in our country. So what happens? Because of that, what happens? We become actually the market for the other countries, because we are one of the largest consumer market in the world. So when we buy something, who gets benefited? We don't know. Which country gets benefited when you buy something is actually a question mark. We sometimes think that it is going to US, sometimes think that it is going to another country, but we really don't know which country is getting benefited when you buy something. So it has got a very big impact. And the population is very high, but are we leveraging our population to actually produce? So the entire global economy get benefited from our population, but I think we are underutilizing the resource. See, when the resources are available, like any other resources, whether it is money, machine, or there, when it is available and if it is underutilized, if you don't create opportunities for utilizing that, then it will be a challenge for any country, because you have to spend on the resources. The consumption goes on the resources, whereas we don't utilize the resources to produce money. So the income producing activity doesn't happen using a resource, then it becomes actually a kind of a underutilized asset. So that is one challenge, that's a problem. So therefore, the major thing that we need to, I suggest is that along with everything else that we do, we need to make sure that our public at large is aware of the importance of business within our country. And therefore, the Make in India should happen in a large scale basis within India with innovations that is happening in India. That is one thing. And with the labor and the management understanding that have good. So I think there should be, there are countries, those who have spent a lot of money in terms of public education on creating their awareness that, okay, what is my role? Why I should participate in the business growth in any country? So that kind of economic growth, what is their role in economy? What, they need to be aware, because awareness is very limited. People are aware, people studied a lot of things, they know how to do a job, but they don't know why I exist and what is my relevance in the socio-economic condition of the village or the town or the city I live in. They don't know about that. I work, I make money, I spend. But why should I be careful about, or why should I be an enabler for the overall economic growth of the city? People are less aware of. So public, even family has, I've come across with situations where labor unrest has been controlled by family members. They actually involve themselves, the children as well as the family members involve themselves, saying that, okay, this is not acceptable. Why are you continuing with the unrest? Let us work and then use constitutional measures to resolve. So these kind of interventions happen because their social status also will get affected when overall disturbance happens. So I have come across with, in my life, I have come across with those kind of situations. So the economy can grow in people in that economy has the awareness, public awareness. So there should be some public education program about not only about other health and related things. We have a lot of education. Similarly in business and the relevance of business. Otherwise, what happened? And also, there should be clear awareness among the industries as well, that yes, how they should be able to utilize the legal provisions, as well as many of the times what happens, the industries doesn't know what exactly is required to be, or which law of the land is to be followed when they start the business. They look at the law when the problem arises. So these kind of things happen. I'll come to the last point in that. So then moving to the unemployment, especially among educated youth, what happens? The educated youth becomes surplus, and even engineers are, see, we have scarcity of ITIs and diploma holders in our country, actually speaking, whereas engineers are available. So what happens? They're compelled to get into any kind of job, but keeping the expectations very high. I am in a lower level job, but because of my education background, I have expectations very high. So what happens? I'm always frustrated and negative, and then get into unwanted discussions, which will create labor unrest within the organization. And companies think that I'm getting an educated person, therefore it will be good. But unfortunately, that is not the reality, because you get an educated person, but if you are not employing people in the right place, there can be expectation differences, and eventually, instead of doing their job, they will get into unwanted discussions and will get it. So we need to create opportunity for the educated youth. Now, the problem is that the businesses have now, in this today's scenario, businesses have got opportunity either to go for technology or to manpower. If I want, I can decide to automate my machines instead of using the manpower. How will I decide? When will I decide? If I am uncomfortable, if I don't get reliability from the manpower, if I am not convinced, or if I am not confident about the consistency in the productivity and the reliability of manpower, I may go to actually the technology-based processes, which need to be removed by multi-level interventions, like even the government, the labor associations, unions, as well as the labor. There should be a comfortability creation within the country everywhere. There are some states extremely good in that. We know that. There are some states still having struggles. So we need to have that kind of an intervention, that where the comfortability of doing business within our country, innovations within our country, because I don't know when an invention happened in India. When was the last invention happened in India, which has really made a difference to the entire world? We don't know about it. I think after C.V. Raman, I don't know what happened after that. So this is something that we need to really look at. We actually work with the intelligence of many other countries and utilizing our labor. So we need to, that's why I say that innovative ideas should come in, and where the businesses need to be using the resources as well as the legal provisions to run business profitably within our country. Then coming, the next thing is that, okay, see, there are many places where the trade unions and the employees understand and constructively fight using constitutional measures and get their problems resolved. but there are places where it is completely different. So we need to ensure that there is wiser counsel prevailing upon all these labor and constructive trade practices are promoted rather than destructive trade practices. There should be a very good education system for even the businesses as well as for labor for constructive trade practices. Because once you destruct, you can never actually create that again. Companies will be able to give you increment, but at the same time, what you destroyed can never come back to the company. That we need to understand that, because it completely goes to the negative, the bottom line of the company as a loss, actually speaking. So, and also it creates liability. So what happens, the heart and soul of the company will be lost when these kind of things happens, and the next manufacturing facility will be in another country. That's what happens. So we need to have very clear, because there are wiser unions that I have come across with, very intelligent unions. They really fight for their labor and get things done, but with their intelligence and knowledge level, not because of the militancy. I've come across with that. So that is something that we need to really leverage, and we need to encourage those kind of things, because awareness about law is not something a crime. Both employer as well as the employee need to aware. Why employer need to be aware of the law? We need to educate them before they start the business. You need to have a test before they start the business whether they are aware of the law of the land or not. Otherwise, what happens when a problem comes? All the issues become which gets into financial liability. It will be a burden for them because they have not factored all these things in their pricing. They've not factored all these things in their pricing when they started the business. So what happens? This becomes a challenge, and so then defensive measures will be taken. They will be defensive more. They'll find a reason not to do that because they're afraid of their financial liability. So a proper education system should be there for both businesses as well as for the labor community on all the laws. They should be. See, above all, I would like to say one more thing.
Please.
Yeah. A law can give you the minimum level of earnings, but relationship can give you much more than that. If employer-employee relationship, because I've seen law will give you minimum wages, but employer-employee relationship will give you 3 times or 4 times of the minimum wages. So a wiser counsel, wiser processes and systems should prevail in the industry, so that both get benefited. The business get benefited, the industry get benefited at the same time. They'll be able to together create a better socio-economic condition and will contribute to the social. And I'm so happy that the report is focusing on economic, social, and cultural life of the stakeholders. The thing is that's something very important, because it's not only money, but also the social and cultural life of the thing. So hats off to Dr. C.V. Ananda Bose, that who has thought about that. It's not about, because work is there, but at the same time, life also needs to be enjoyed in a better way. So with that, I think I close my words.
Okay.
So
Thank you very much, Mr. Anil Kumar. And Mr. Anil Kumar has raised a very, very pertinent question, which one has to think that, yes, we are one of the biggest consumers market in the world with so much population. But what we are purchasing, the money is not coming to us. The profit goes to some other country. Yes, if we compare this with China, see, they are having more population, but what they are doing is they are consuming their own things. That's why the development is there. So one point which he has raised is, yes, if we are doing it, we must think that whatsoever we are purchasing, the things should come back to the country. And second point which he has raised about that the skilled labor, he says the ITIs are there many. Yes, Mr. Anil Kumar, you are right, but I will tell you, because we have done this, I'm doing the shows every day. The fact of the thing is that out of 100 ITIs, only 20% are employable. And the industry says that after 6 months of training, only 6% of them are going to be retained by the industry. Now, here the question is the skill training or the education. Whatsoever we are doing is not up to that standard, so that we are not making them employable. Now, with the new government's new educational policy 2020, I'm sure that is. And one more very important point which Mr. Anil Kumar says, that we must see to it that the law can give you something, but the personal touch, the relationship among the employer and employee can give you more benefits. And if employee or the labor or the workforce destroy something, then you will not get what you are supposed to get, because the industrialist has never taken that consideration in his project report when he set up the industry. And that is a very, very important point. Any organization, any union or any labor association must think twice before taking any militant action. Yes, you have lots of rights, what Mr. Anil Kumar said, that how you can solve the things amicably without using any force. Thank you very much, Mr. Anil Kumar, for giving views. Sorry, I have to disrupt you because of the paucity of time. And now I have only one minute for all of you for giving the reply, although I have so many questions, but because you are giving so much detailed things, I could not dare to stop you in between. I would like to go to Mr. Deepak first. Mr. Deepak, because you are associated with this report and you know the report ins and out, and you know how practically the report has been given and recommendations. But is there any recommendation how to implement this report, which is very important? Giving the report, so we know in India so many commissions have been appointed and they have submitted their reports, but the reports always get the dust here and there. But is there any recommendation how to implement this report? Mr. Deepak, please.
Yeah, so that is something we've been.
Mr. Deepak, your video is off.
Sorry.
Yes,
so
please.
audio, video on.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
This we have discussed with Dr. Ananda Bose in great detail. I think we are using 2-3 pipelines which will get these recommendations to the right, authorities, and we will pursue implementation methodologies with these authorities very, very stringently, and hope that the recommendation is implemented both in letter and spirit. If you give me 30 seconds, I just want to give 4 or 5 major recommendations which we want to put up, which will answer some of the panelists' questions also. We are looking at a self-registration, digitization of informal workers, so that with those databases, we are able to help them map skills, improve skills, access to various social security schemes, etc. We are looking for a national labor authority to be set up, which will address a holistic development of unorganized labor, these regional disparities, etc., which were brought out by one of the panelists. We're looking at setting up migrant resource centers, typically to address origin and destination interstate migration. Looking at housing access in the rental housing market, and remittance connectivity bottleneck removal, so that financial inclusion to the families who are left behind is improved. So this is in a nutshell. I know we are running out of time, but these are the broad recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Deepak. Mr. Premchand, you are dealing with the labor so closely. What are the problems faced by the migrants in the present scenario, and any solution? 1 minute, please.
Thank you. 1 minute. Okay, I have to very much thickly condense because the problems faced by the migrants. See, initially, as I said, the problems faced here. I mean, my co-panelist, Mr. Anil, is also saying we have technical people here, but they are put into unskilled work, and that is where the attitudinal difference. And Mr. Goyal was saying about employability in the ITIs and coming in. See, what basically earlier, as I was focusing, what is lacking in all this is the lack of proper attitudinal orientation also. In these courses, in these areas, the attitude corrections of the people, of the employable people are not being done. Similarly, there is a lot of flaw in the recruitment. See, why migrant laborers are so much focusing here is because, see, there is a major flaw in our recruitment. When we need somebody, we just go and take a person who is overqualified. He may come in for the sake of his earning some money, but we should understand that for him, that is an overqualification, and he may later on become unfit. So either he has to be reoriented or reskilled, and his attitude should be corrected before we place. Similarly, for migrant laborers, I would say that what is very important is not just looking at options coming here. We should look at suitable options for these laborers labor in their respective hometowns, where they are more comfortable in their living atmosphere, in having certain excellent facilities suiting to their environment, their climate, which can also add income to our country, and we have our own in-source resource generation, so that the gap is bridged. And and then this, why are they coming here? Because of the poor salary structure. So if you have a uniform wage code, which is being talked about now, this disparity is lost, and they will have their own satisfaction there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
Of
you.
course, loss of time, I have no other way to.
Thank you
Sorry.
very much, Mr. Premchand. Mr. Abraham, being a banker, my question to you is, what economic package to be given for the immediate relief to the workforce affected by COVID-19? 1 minute, please.
I think the government has been doing quite a lot with regard to they cannot pay the money right from their pockets to all the people. I mean, there have been facilities for guaranteed loans, which they have been giving in a large scale to major companies to take over difficulties. And also they have been free rations and things like that, especially in various states they have been giving. I think they have to continue with these kind of things little more. And I think the petrol prices and things like that are again going to be a problem for the common man. So price rise is going to be the biggest issue. I think controlling the price is also one of the major aims for the government to look after, to take care of the common man. One more very small thing I should say, add to this, the voluntary organizations, this has nothing to do with your question. Voluntary organizations can help a lot with the government for skill updations and skill training, the Rotary clubs, and many people will be there. The government can go with them and
Thank you very much. Mr. Anil, what institutional arrangements are required for the social security of the workforce? 30 seconds to you.
If you look at all the laws that we are having currently, effective use of the law, because almost all the laws in the country are either for justice, peace and harmony, or social control, safety and security, or productivity and growth. All the laws can be classified. So I think the proper implementation of almost all the existing laws available in the country itself, because another thing is that the social security, the social security rules are yet to come. I think the code is out, but the rules are yet to come. Maybe during that formation of the rules, if we can factor in some of the emergency cases, how we will handle some of the emergency cases other than the normal situation, if that can be factored in those cases. For example, COVID is something that we never expected. In the law, we write everything what is expected, but if something unexpected comes, yes, definitely there are emergency response rules are all there, but something, so those kind of things can be included.
Okay.
Otherwise.
Okay, thank you very much. So viewers, you have seen today the experts' opinion about the labor problems and solutions. And the one thing very commonly everyone has vouched, and they says the recommendation, the one-man expert commission report prepared by Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, is going to be a game changer if it is implemented in spirit and totally. I'm sure the government will definitely take care of that, and they will implement, because so much work has been done, although in a very, very short time, but it was done under his able guidance. So today's program is live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, Newsgaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring to you every day a new topic. And tomorrow, media conference with Lal Goyal, the topic is Forest Rights Act, Bane or Boon. And our panelists are Mr. Bhupati Prasad Pandey, IAS, former Additional Chief Secretary, Government of Maharashtra, Dr. Dhirendra Kumar Srivastav, IFS, former Chairman, Jharkhand Public Service Commission, Government of Jharkhand, Dr. Arvind Kumar Jha, IFS, former PCCF and DG Social Forestry, Government of Maharashtra, and Mr. Kishore Ritte, former member, National Board for Wildlife, renowned conservation practitioner, Mumbai. So please tune in tomorrow for media conference with Lal Goyal at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much, Mr. Premchand. Thank you very much, Mr. Deepak. Thank you very much, Mr. Abraham. And thank you very much, Mr. Anil Kumar, for joining us. And thank you all our viewers for viewing our program. Thank you very much.